Hello and welcome to week 2 of HelenJoy Creates a ZENTANGLE a Day for a Year. If you didn't catch week 1, here's a little view of what we did, but please go and check out my channel and you can see the tutorial for week 1. I mentioned in the last video how I had been having problems drawing because of the thickness of this little pad and the height of my hand. But thank you to Deborah Mitchum for leaving a comment saying to open the ring and take the paper out. To be honest, I don't know why that hadn't crossed my mind. Maybe I thought it would be difficult to do, but as you can see, it's quite easy. So that's what I'm going to be doing from now on. Thank you to everyone also who left messages about background music. Those who did leave messages seem to say they enjoyed the music, so I will endeavour to add music in the gaps. So let's get started with week 2, day 1. So I'll show you the design that we're going to work on first, so you've got an idea what we're working on, and then we'll get on with it. So I start with pencil marks about 1 centimetre apart, just making a grid. All the designs this week are based on a basket weave type design, thanks to Wendy who left a comment asking about that. I'm just showing you with the ruler, it's roughly about 1 centimetre, but obviously it's up to you how you want to space them out, but just roughly. With the pen, I make a small square on each mark and we're going to go across the whole page like that. At certain points I will speed up the video, but I will put a pause button, as you can see there, if you want to just pause and if you're following along so that you can finish off those bits. I've just speeded up the video a bit so that it's not so boring to watch if you're not following along. We're going to take our pencil again, and if you can see there's a square, as it were, and you want to make lines on the inside of that square going vertically up and down. So you're going to just go down the edge inside that square. And you're going to find the next square and do the same and keep going along one square at a time, drawing on the inside of those boxes. Then next you're going to go on the outside, so the next one down you go on the outside of the 2 squares. Sorry, I changed my pattern there. Then what I wanted to show you was that going vertically you're doing in, out, in, out, in, out if you were carrying on the pattern. So you've got the in, then you go outside and then inside. So if you imagine you had that first square that we drew in, and then you've got that middle square, as it were, with the pencil lines on the outside edges, you want to draw on the inside horizontally this time. So again, the lines are on the outside edges, you want to have your horizontal lines on the inside edges. It's basically every other space, as you can see. Then the next line down, it will be diagonal to the ones on top. So as you can see there, you're doing the opposite spaces to the ones you filled. And the next line down, obviously you're going to be copying the first line. Or again, if you just check the lines that are going vertically on the outside, you want to be drawing on the inside horizontally on those. So I hope you can see the pattern developing now, and then as we go in with the pen, it will make it a little more obvious. Again, after the first few I'll speed up, and then if you are copying along you can just pause when you see the pause button while you catch up. So there we have a basic weave pattern for day 1. Day 2 is basically going to be the same, but adding just a little bit more detail. So don't worry so much if you didn't quite figure out that day 1 pattern. You're going to have a chance now to try it again. We're going to do exactly the same pattern, but just adding an extra little element to it. So as you can see, this is what we're aiming for the next design. Same basket weave, but just adding that shading. So again, go across your page with your squares, and if you're following along, when you see the pause button, you can just pause it to catch up. And again, that first box, we're going to draw vertical lines on the inside, then the outside, and then the inside. And go to the next one and do the same. You draw lines on the inside, then the outside, then the inside. And again, we're going to do our horizontal lines on the boxes where the lines are on the outside vertically. So that sort of second box or half box, as it were, you're going to do that. Then you're going to obviously miss a space, go to the next one, because they're the lines on the outside. And again, just carry on just like the previous design, doing that. So to add another dimension to this, I'm going to take my thinner fine liner, the 0.25mm one, and just draw some lines to represent shadows. So the lines that look like they're going underneath in the weave, we're just going to draw a few strokes under each of those. And just go through the whole design. First of all, do the vertical and then the horizontal, or either way depending. Just go through the whole design, making sure that you've not forgotten any spaces. Just a little tip here, if you want your lines to look slightly thicker at the start and thinner at the end, I found that just leaving your pen on the paper slightly longer when you first put your pen down, and then slightly lifting it up as you draw it across, helps to give it a thicker beginning and a finer edge. For day 3, we're going to change it up a little bit. So you can see from that pattern it's slightly different. And what we're going to do is, when we do our marks, we're going to make our kind of square with our dots, just like we did before. But then our next line is going to be narrower, so a lot closer. So again, our first 2 dots are about 1 centimetre apart, and then the smaller ones maybe about 1/2 centimetre. So if you just keep going across like that, doing sort of centimetre squares with a 1/2 centimetre gap, if you can imagine that in your mind, that's how I found it easier to think about how I was doing it. I decided to change it up a little bit and do circles rather than squares for my marks. But again, exactly the same process, just go through all of your marks, making circles with the pen. And again, exactly the same process then with the lines that we make, the vertical lines on the inside of the dots to start with, doing in, out, just like the previous two. So if you get a bit lost, it's that larger square you want to be drawing your vertical lines between on the insides. Then we're going to add our horizontal lines. In a way, this design is a little easier to follow because it's on that first line, it's the smaller gap, and then on the second line down, as it were, it's that longer, larger gap that you're drawing your horizontal lines in. I decided to add a slightly different dimension here just by slightly curving my lines when I joined them together. As you can see here, I am actually going for the horizontal lines first, whereas the other two I actually joined the vertical ones first. But you know, it's the same, you're following your pencil lines anyway. But yeah, I just decided it would give it a bit of a different look to curve my lines. With the horizontal lines being so curved, I decided it would actually look better if my vertical lines were slightly straighter. I mean, you can try obviously having a go with different things. That's just the way I preferred it. I then decided to use my thinner fine liner again just to add that shading type line, just to give it an extra bit of dimension. As you might notice, I haven't filled in the central vertical lines yet. I actually had forgotten about them. So you could leave it like that, it looks perfectly fine, but you can fill them in too. As you'll see later on, I realised that I've not done them, and add them in, so you will be able to see the difference between having them added in and left as it is. So for day 4, I decided to go for a slightly different weave look. I did make a slight mistake at the beginning, but I will point that out to you, so if you're following along, please watch out for that. So we're going to draw some vertical lines. Think of them as ribbons going down. And then in between every other gap, I'm just going to add 2 thinner lines. So if you think it's like a thin ribbon in between the gap of a wider ribbon. So you've got the ribbon, wider ribbon, thinner ribbon, wider ribbon with a gap in between each. I hope that makes sense. So it's like I've got a thin ribbon to start, a gap, then a wider ribbon, a gap, a thinner ribbon, a gap, a wider ribbon. I hope you can see the kind of pattern that's there. Next, we're just going to take a pencil and draw a wavy line across, and just follow that across a few times, however many you can fit easily. I thought it might be helpful, not just for you but also for me, when I'm doing my weave, if I can see clearly where my lines, or my ribbons as it were, are. So I've just made a mark on my thinner ribbons, which to be honest aren't too difficult to see, but I was getting confused with the wider ones, which ones were my ribbons and which ones were my gaps. So I've just drawn on a separate piece of paper, so you can see with the colour pencils where my ribbons are, so I know the spaces in between are the gaps. So our first wavy line that we're going to do is going to go over the small ribbon and under the fat ribbon. So our line is going to go up to and stop at the wider ribbon. And then we're going to continue it from the wider ribbon over the thinner ribbon up to the next wider ribbon. So we're going to do that all the way across. So basically starting at the wider ribbon and going over the thinner ribbon all the way across on this first line. Always over the thinner ribbon and just from the point of the wider one to the point of the next wider one. Then our next line, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to start from the edge of the thinner ribbon and go over the wider one. Now this is where I make my mistake on the next line because I don't stop in time. So this one was fine. So again, we're going to go from the edge of the thinner ribbon, so that blue mark, and across that wider ribbon with the red mark, and we should stop then at the thinner ribbon, but then I accidentally go across. So make sure you stop at that edge of that thinner ribbon, don't go across it, otherwise you'll have the same issue I had with trying to then get rid of my mark. I just used my white jelly roll pen to try and cover it up a little bit. So remember, we're starting at the edge of the thinner ribbon and going across the wider ribbon, and again, and stopping at the thinner one for this one. So again, we're going to just go all the way across, starting on the edge of the thinner ribbon and going over the top of the wider one. In some ways the next line down should be a little easier because you've got that top line to follow. I'm going to do exactly the same, going over the thinner ribbon and under, or starting at, the wider ribbon, and just keep going across and doing the next ribbon down as well. For our final design of the week, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do some frame box weaving, I guess. So we're going to start off by drawing some small rectangles with a larger rectangle around the edge so that we make ourselves a frame. You need to make sure that you're giving yourself enough space inside and between them, because we're going to have lines going through these. Next, we're going to draw some vertical lines through the centre of the boxes. So just keep going through doing that, and then we'll do the same going horizontally. We're going to go through the boxes. Sorry about my lighting there, I'm not quite sure what happened. Maybe the sun decided to come through the window at that point. But I think you get the idea of what we're trying to do. The first thing we're going to do with our pen is draw the horizontal lines of our frames. So we're going to do that inside and outside horizontal line of each of the boxes. Next, I fill in the vertical line that goes through the frame. So you're almost, it looks a bit like a capital I that you've got in there. Then we're going to add the horizontal line that goes through the box, imagining it going underneath that first vertical line, so that our horizontal line will stop at each vertical line that we've just put in. Then we're just going to finish off the boxes by adding the vertical lines, again imagining that they're going to go under that line that we've just drawn that's going through the box. So you can see, because the line's already there, we're just going to stop at it as we get to it. I'm just going to add those top little lines as if they've joined on to the vertical line going through the box, and then repeat exactly what I did above on the boxes below, doing the horizontal lines first, then doing the central line like an I, and then adding the then adding the horizontal line through the centre, again stopping every time I hit the line, then finishing off the frame again. You could leave it like that, or if you want the pattern to particularly pop out, you might want to colour in the gaps in black just to really make the pattern stand out and look a bit more three-dimensional. But otherwise, that is day 5 done and all 5 patterns for week 2 finished. Thank you for watching again, and if you want to keep up with my progress each week, please hit the subscribe and the bell button so that you get notifications of the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.